Yo, what is up guys? It is Samool back again with another Epic 7 tier list for you guys today, and today we're going to be ranking all the units for World Arena or RTA. That being said, this tier list is just my opinion guys and what I've seen from my experiences in World Arena, and also after collaborating with some people from my guild and some friends that are also highly ranked in RTA as well. You guys can have differing opinions, it's fine, it's just a tier list after all, and by the time you guys watch this video, maybe the meta has changed a little bit, but for the most part I think this tier list is generally accurate, especially for the units within their own tiers. That being said, if you guys aren't already subscribed to my channel and want to see updates when I have tier lists and guides released on YouTube, make sure you guys hit that subscribe button, and also to get updates when I have live streams, you guys should follow me on Twitch as well. I've been streaming on YouTube and Twitch recently. I do plan to switch fully over to Twitch in the near future because it is better for Epic 7 content creators for streaming. So make sure you guys follow me on Twitch as well, even if you're following me on YouTube. That being said, let's get into the tier list. So we have these tiers. We have the OP tier. These units will be first picked a lot of the times in a lot of games and even pre-banned. Then we have the S tier. These units are still very strong, although you won't see them pre-banned as often. Then we have the A tier. These units are also still very strong, but they'll have a lot more counterplay and counter picks to them. And then the B and C tier. These units are very niche. B tier units being a little bit more usable than the C tier units. And then below that we have the E tier, which is, yeah, just eh. So that being said, let's talk about the OP units. So these units you're going to see pre-banned a lot often. We have Conqueror Lilias, Apoc Ravi, Ran, and Hwayoung. So these units all are pre-banned. Honestly, you can't even say which one's better than the other in this tier. All pretty much equally strong. It really depends on, what units you actually own, and for the most part, what type of gear you're running them on. But generally, in my opinion, I do think Conqueror Lilias is the best in the game. Still, because of the fact that her vigor buff is so broken, just having that permanent attack and defense buff up, I guess not permanent, but undispellable, is just really nice. And the fact that she has super high speed with dual attacks just makes her really annoying to deal with. After that we have Apoc Ravi. You guys probably already know because I complain about her all the time, especially because I don't own her. But yeah, very annoying, a lot of single target damage. In fact, all single target damage. She has injuries, which makes her very strong in longer fights. She has Revive, Skill Nullifier, a huge hard-hitting S3 nuke, and CR push for herself and healing. Pretty much everything you want in a kit for a bruiser, which she is. And she even has cleansing for herself if you run her on Crimson Seed, which is what she's mostly run on. Then we have Ran. So yeah, Ran, very powerful. He is one of the few counters to Hwayoung, which is also an OP unit, if you guys did not know. But Ran is very good for cleavers. He has the highest base speed in the game at 129. He will pretty much always take the first turn. Only downside is if you don't take the first turn with Ran, you're probably going to lose. But if you do take the first turn, you're in a good spot if you've drafted around him, pretty accordingly and have a good cleave team around him. You actually can also transition him from a cleave team to an aggressive team if people are drafting anti-cleave really early against him. So you can always just run him in aggressive team because, he does have a lot of AoE damage and he does provide immunity buff for your team. So very nice. Now we have Hwayoung. So this unit is pretty toxic. RGB 5-star, one-shots tanks, one-shot squishies, very tanky with her barrier from her S2 that scales with her attack. And she is really easy to make tanky because she doesn't require crit chance or crit damage, so you can actually just stack her with attack and defense and speed, making it so that her barrier cycles very quickly. You also don't need HP on her because you want her to be low HP to one-shot tanks, right? So you only really need attack, speed, and defense, which makes her very easy to gear, and I guess effect resist as well, which makes her harder to debuff. And she's just very powerful. Not a lot of counters out there, a few being like Ran, Operator's Secret and stuff like that. But for the most part, she's basically going to one-shot something if she takes her turn. And I think the fact that she one-shots something no matter what, if she takes a turn, is kind of toxic in my opinion. Now we're dropping into the S tier. So S tier units are still very powerful. They just won't be as pre-banned as much as the OP units. But sometimes you'll see them slip into the pre-ban. So first we have AOL. ML 4-star unit, should be an ML 5-star. Extremely powerful. People were complaining about her when she first got released. People still complain about her. People are rioting still about her. People are saying AOL is the reason why the meta turned to crap, basically. Kind of true, but this unit is extremely broken. She has that strip and that silence on her S3, which completely will neuter a lot of units. She also has her pushback in her S1 or CR pushback. She has counter cleave in her S2 with that skill nullifier and cleanse. Just super annoying to deal with. Basically, if AOL gets the first turn, in a lot of situations will just win. And if she can get her unbuffable and silence to land, even if she doesn't go first, basically you'll win. Just very, very powerful. Her S3 is just completely insane, and she'll get more than one of them off per fight because the cooldown is really short. And a lot of times you'll see her run on, Etika Scepter or Spirit's Breath, and you'll just get, your S3 up a lot. So it's really, really annoying to deal with because you're going to see a lot of the units that are in the current meta kind of rely on buffs. Speaking of buffs, after AOL, we have Diene. So Diene, very powerful Soul Weaver. She is replacing Amelia at the #1 spot for best Soul Weaver in RTA because of her buffs. She is really strong in aggressive comps now because she has a lot more CR pushing, while being very viable in defensive comps because of the barrier she puts up, the fact that she cycles very quickly. If you run her on Rod of Amaryllis, she also provides very decent healing as well. So for that reason, she is in the top of the S tier. Now we have Bellion. So Bellion, people always say that she's either OP or S tier, A tier. They go back and forth. But I'm going to put her smack dab in the middle in the S tier. I think you won't really see her pre-ban. Actually, you will see her pre-ban quite often because she's really annoying to deal with. But there are a lot of counters for her, right? You can run Rowana, you can run Rem, you can run SSB, right? There's a lot of options. You can run Hwayoung, you can run Apoc Ravi, you can run just basically anything that can either single target nuke her or really abuse the fact that Bellion is going to be on a Elbrus Ritual Sword, which will proc counters, and also the fact that she's all AoE. So, very easy to counter, but even if you do counter pick her, there are situations where she'll still win because you're going to see her run on injury set, and injury set on AoE units is just really, really, really strong, and you're going to see in longer fights she's very powerful, and she's just a really good option to cleave as well, which is a pretty popular strategy in the current state of the game. Now we have Spectre Tenebria. So Spectre Tenebria, one of the best single target DPS in the game because she is invulnerable to single target attacks, but also because she is being run on penetration set now. So basically what you do at the start of battle is you attack buff her, she will soul burn her S1, which is single target if you don't have your S3 on cooldown, and then S3 on a unit, and you'll basically one-shot them with that attack buff. Very, very strong as a single target nuker right now. She will basically delete someone out of the game instantly, and then she'll get that stacking passive on her S2, making her tankier. Very popular build, very popular way to use her, and it just makes her, very annoying to deal with. You definitely have to also draft around Spectre Tenebria as well, which makes her very strong. If you have no AoE, you have to ban her because you have no way to reach her, right? If you have a Bellion and you don't want to pick her because she's bad here, sometimes you'll have to pick the Bellion because Bellion is a very good answer to Spectre Tenebria as well. There's a lot of ways to draft around her, but the thing is when Spectre Tenebria does come out, you have to draft around her, which makes her very strong. Now we have Meteor Cowrick, very good cleanser, very good attack buffer, very good damage dealer, very good barrier user as well. So yeah, just basically does everything. Very strong jack of all trades unit. He basically just does everything. But yeah, he's not really specialized in anything right now. He used to be like super OP, but there's a lot more priority picks above him, I'd say, because aggressive and cleave comps are definitely more popular right now. And he doesn't really fare too well against those units compared to another cleanser we'll talk about. But he's still a very, very strong unit. Definitely borderline OP still. Now we have Adventurer Ross. So this unit got buffed basically through runes. It made it so that whenever your backline unit gets hit by a single target attack, it will give them a huge, huge barrier. Now that single target attack can't be procced by, Soul Weavers or Knights. It has to do like 40%, I think. It's either 30 or 40% of their HP. And then you'll get a 10k barrier for 2 turns. So very thick barrier, and it's not even just a 1-turn barrier, guys. 2-turn barrier, so that unit will not die for 2 turns. So Aros is very strong just because of that rune, and couple that with the fact that his kit is already very good, right? You have that dual attack with a chance of defense break, which will also scale into the late game because the souls make his S2 extremely broken, and you also have that AoE defense buff as well, which is very powerful. So after Aros, guys, we have Designer Lilibet. So Designer Lilibet, very similar to Meteor Cowrick in that they cleanse, but that's pretty much it. But Designer Lilibet is less utility overall, doesn't have that barrier or attack buff. She's very selfish, I'd say, deals more damage. But the thing is, she can cut units pretty easily, especially if your team gets hit by a lot of debuffs. So she's very, very good against units like Peyra. She's good against cleave teams as well, because if she cuts a cleave team, she basically will just single-handedly wipe your team. So very, very strong. Next we have Amelia. So Amelia's still very good. She is a little bit weaker than Diene now though, because Amelia is very, I'd say like one-dimensional. But in that one dimension, she's extremely powerful. She's a very strong, aggressive Soul Weaver. She has that S2 CR push into attack buff, and that CR push is 50%, so it's pretty huge, and just very strong. Only thing is her healing and her barriers are not that great, and her CR pushing for herself is not that great either, whereas Diene has a lot more CR pushing for herself. She also, can heal more, right, than Amelia can. She also even can CR push her entire team now with her S2 exclusive equipment. So for that reason, I think Diene is a lot more flexible and overall better, but Amelia is slightly better, I'd say, in aggressive comps where you want to semi-cleave or single target cleave even. Next, we have Landy. So Landy definitely has taken a few hits in the tier list because of the fact that there's a lot of strong fire units, there's a lot of ways to strip her guiding light, but there's also, the fact that she's Landy. She's still very, very good. A lot of damage, longer fights, if she doesn't get hit, she will do very, very, very well. Very good paired with Aros, because Aros will help her, cycle her turns, because he will always bring her with his dual attack most of the time. And also the fact that the rune will really, really protect her against single target threats now, even though she gets popped out of stealth. Next we have Ada, so very popular cleave unit, just really annoying to deal with. This unit does a lot of damage, she can cut you, and she can hold Tongyeol's Ancient Book. Very commonly paired with Ran and Pavel, very, very powerful. If you guys like cleaving, make sure you build her. She's one of the best cleavers in the game. Next we have Pavel, I just mentioned him, also very powerful. He is going to be a very popular pick for cleavers. Only downside is that he requires pretty insane gear and also needs to be with a book holder, so Bellions will kind of shut him down, but you can just pre-ban Bellion and do very well with him. He is, like I said, very hard to gear, but if you can gear him very well, you're going to notice that he can, do a lot of damage and one-shot entire teams, or pretty much one-shot them, and it's just very, very fun to use. S-tier cleaver for sure. Next, we have Politis. So Politis can be used as an anti-cleaver or as a cleaver, and also can be run on different builds. You can run her on full damage, which is very common right now, or even tanky effectiveness, which is not as common but still very annoying because she can stun with Abyssal Crown that way. But yeah, very, very popular because not only can you use her as a standard player, but you can also use her as a cleaver, also use her in anti-cleave, so she's very, very flexible. That's why she's very good. Next we have Pera. I think Pera has taken a big hit since her release. She's not as good as the other openers, I'd say, even though she's kind of meant to counter them, because she doesn't really provide anything outside of the strip and the, unbuffable, as well as the attack buff. But, still a very good opener, guys. You can still use her in cleave. I just think that Ran and Conqueror Lilias and AOL as openers are just better. But, Pera is it's very easy to take turn 1 with her because of her base speed. Even though Ran's is slightly higher, she's still very good as an opener. Next we have Rimuru. So Rimuru took a big hit, like a stealth nerf, because of the fact that Aros got buffed. Because when you S3 into a squishy unit now, you won't kill them. The S3 damage will go first, and the barrier will proc, and then the fixed damage goes after, and the barrier is already there, so you won't one-shot. But in the scenarios where Aros is absent, or in scenarios where Hwayoung is also absent, because Hwayoung also hard counters him, then he becomes pretty decent. People also like to use him against Ran, but the thing is with Ran is you can just S3 instead of S2 S3ing, right? Just completely ignore Ran S2, and you can cleave Rimuru still. So, definitely has taken a few hits, but he's still a very, very powerful unit in the right situations. Still very good against buff-heavy teams. Next, we have Meru. So Meru, very strong. People don't know she's strong because it doesn't seem like she solo carries a game. But let's be honest. Every time you fight against Meru, guys, in RTA, or even anywhere, you're praying that every time you attack her, she does not counter. You are just praying on your knees, because when she does counter, it's really, really frustrating. She strips your buffs, which, there's a lot of buffs in the current meta. She can seal you, which is super annoying on units like Landy, who will lose that attack damage, and just anything with a strong passive like Apoc Ravi, right, stuff like that, and even like Hwayoung. And yeah, she's just really, really annoying because she's just so tanky. She doesn't do a lot of upfront damage, but over a long battle, she's just extremely frustrating to deal with, and just really annoying to deal with as well as being easy to build. So I think for that reason, she's definitely S tier. A lot of people don't know it, but if you pick her in certain situations, she becomes a must ban because she can solo carry teams, especially if they have pretty good RNG and get lucky with counters. Okay, now we're dropping into the A tiers. So these units are still very strong, don't get me wrong, but you know, they have a little bit more counterplay and units you can pick them, or units you can pick into them. So starting off, we have Alencia. Alencia recently got buffed. She has injuries now. Her Mind's Eye is always on. She does more damage. Very, very powerful bruiser. I think she's probably the second best bruiser behind Apoc Ravi right now, just because of the fact that in longer fights, similar to Apoc Ravi, especially if you run Alencia on injury set, which is becoming very popular, she will do a lot over long periods of time because stacking up injuries, right? And also, you know, with the Mind's Eye, she's proccing it twice. She also has that AoE on her S3, and people even run her on pen set, so early into the fight, she does a lot of damage as well with her pen set, right? So really annoying to deal with. She's also very powerful because of the fact that she has that AoE strip in a buff heavy meta. Also has that defense buff, which is extremely powerful. The only thing is she's hard to build. So especially if you run her on injury pen set, guys, you're going to find that she's very difficult to meet the stat guidelines for. So if you find like a legend Alencia, like their Alencia is going to be cracked with a capital C. You know, my Alencia is pretty much hot dog water compared to them, but Alencia is a very, very powerful unit if you can build her well. You just have to make sure you can build her well, right? And get into KDs and get good pen sets and injury sets. So yeah, very, very strong. I definitely recommend building her if you have her. Even if you run her on a speed set, you know, she's still very, very powerful. Next, we have FCC or Fallen Cecilia. No surprise, she will always, always, always be A tier or above because of her damage mitigation. Sure, she has some counters out there like LQC and Opsig, but still very powerful. Fallen Cecilia, you can never ever call her bad in any meta because of the fact that her barriers are just extremely OP, and AoE skill nullifier with the fact that she has 100% provoke on her S1 is just an extremely OP kit for any knight to mitigate damage for your team. Now we have Lionheart Cermia. So this unit I actually was struggling to decide whether it should be S tier or A tier because in situations where you pick her, she's a must ban. She's really good against extra attacks, dual attacks, stuff like that. You guys already know, counter attacks, because you know she does a lot of damage with her S3. Now that damage will not one-shot your team most of the time, but because the meta has slowed down and because you see a lot of supportive units now like Aros, Diene, like stuff that can mitigate damage, you're gonna get like 2 or 3 S3s off, which makes her a very strong like AoE damage dealer now, which is very weird. And the fact that her Soulburn gives her an extra turn makes it really easy to cycle her S3 and build more Fighting Spirit for it, I mean. And she's just very, very strong. And in a lot of situations, she will solo carry your team. Lionheart Cermia, I think, is a very underrated pick. People think she's good already, but I think she's better than people actually think she is. I think she's just very, very strong. You know, I'm struggling to, you know, put her in the A tier, but, you know, I can't really put her in the S tier because I think the S tier units are a little bit more usable universally and overall, and more like blind pickable than Lionheart Cermia is because she kind of relies on, you know, there being a lot of counterattacks on the enemy team. Next, we have Sylvan Sage Vivian or ML Vivian, newest ML5. I think she's pretty balanced, as I say that, as she's in the A tier, but she is strong, but she's not like overly OP, right? There's ways to play around her, right? You can just not focus her, not let her cycle too many S3s, and, you know, just not let her build too many souls either to AoE your team down. But also, she's very strong because she has that crit damage buff on her S3. I think that S3 doesn't hit very hard, but that crit damage buff, if you pair it with an attack buff on any damage dealer like Landy, S10A, even like tank units, right, like Apoc Ravi's or Bellion, like they're gonna do crazy amounts of damage. And that crit damage buff is very underrated. Even though crit damage buff exists on other units, those units are either very squishy or provide nothing outside of that. Whereas Sylvan Sage Vivian is very tanky and it's just really, really annoying to deal with. You kind of feel pressured to kill her right away, but you kind of don't want to because you know she takes less damage, so very annoying to deal with sometimes. Now we have Rem. So Rem is still very good. She used to be like super OP, but not as much anymore. You see her a lot as a counter to like Bellions right now and Cleave, but she's very, very good in those areas, right? Very good as a Bellion counter and very good against Cleave. And because Cleave is becoming very popular, you'll see her a lot more often. Now we have Arya. So Arya, if the enemy team has no strips, that counter-attacking stance and that stealth for her team becomes extremely annoying. Just very annoying to deal with. She does crazy damage as well and very, very, like I said, annoying to deal with. In the right situations, you have to just basically ban her, especially if you have no way to get rid of those buffs. And if you don't have AoE or reach, it's just really hard to deal with. Even if you do, sometimes you get countered to death and it's really annoying to deal with. Now we have Choux. Choux is one of the warriors that also got buffed with Alencia. I think that Choux is pretty decent. The thing is, he's basically Ice Charles. Basically, she relies heavily on RNG to get her counters and her S2s off. But the fact that, you know, she can do a lot of damage makes her very, very good. I think in really good Choux games, she'll seem like the most OP unit in the game, but in the worst Choux games where she doesn't counter as much, she'll seem like the worst unit in the game. So there's very high highs and very low lows. So for that reason, I think she's pretty inconsistent. So I can't really rank her any higher than this. I still think Alencia is a little bit better because Alencia is very consistent. And I think consistency is key in a gacha game. You can't really rely on RNG too much. But she's very fun to use. And I think when you do have that lucky game, she will basically solo the enemy team for you. And her buffs are very nice as well. Now we have Summertime Hysteria. So Summertime Hysteria will be OP tier for cleavers, for cleave tier list. But the thing is, she can only be used in cleave. You know, you can make her work in bruiser builds or like tankier teams, but it's just not as good. And the thing with Summertime Hysteria is whenever you see Summertime Hysteria picked, you already know it's coming. It's 100% cleave, and it's very obvious people are going to pick her, right? If you see a cleaver pick Peyra or Ran, you already know 100% they're picking Summertime Hysteria. Whereas Ada, Politis, and Pavel, you know, you don't really know if they'll pick those units. Sure, there's a very high chance, but Summertime Hysteria is basically a must pick for cleavers. Very easy to draft around because of that, but, you know, even though she's expected, sometimes she'll just blow up your team anyways because, yeah. Also, she kind of relies heavily on the units around her. Even if your Summertime Hysteria is very well built, if your team doesn't go first or you don't get that perfect turn lineup, then she's basically useless. And you have to be careful picking her sometimes. And you just have to be careful cleaving in general. Violet. So Violet is a very powerful unit against cleave right now. Very good against like Rans, Peyras, stuff like that. Even Summertime Hysterias if you have him on immunity. And he's still very good against very tanky teams that don't have a way to kill him in one turn cycle because of the fact that he has so much built-in healing. And he's just really annoying to deal with. I don't think he's as broken anymore because, you know, you can always just one-shot him with Hwayoung or pick Spectre Tenebria and just not deal with his counters and stuff like that, or Landy even with her S3s, but still very strong. And he's a little bit RNG dependent, right, because of his evasion. Next we have the two Sids. So the two Sids you're going to see mostly as speed contesters. Assassin Sid you can use whenever you want to counter cleave or, you know, counter initiate and try to take turn 1. Green Sid you're going to use a lot in cleave teams because of that speed imprint, or and he has very strong single target damage. He can take out 2 units in one turn, especially with that exclusive equipment buff. Makes him very powerful in a single target cleave situation. So both these units very good for, you know, players that want to take turn 1. Operator Sigurd, I think Operator Sigurd came up a bit because of Hwayoung also getting countered by her. The fact that cleave and aggression is more popular now as well has kind of put her up in the A tier. Rowana, always going to be a good unit in PvP because there's a lot of counter units. She's just very good against counter. Just pick her against counter teams and you're good to go. She becomes a must ban in a lot of situations. Like if you pick Ram and you see a Rowana, probably going to want to ban it. If you pick SSB and you see a Rowana, probably going to want to ban it. If you pick Bellion and you see a Rowana, probably going to want to ban it, right? So, you know, there's going to be situations where even if you counter pick with Rowana, you lose sometimes, especially against like Bellions if they're on injury. But 90% of the time you'll win if you counter pick correctly with Rowana and they don't ban it. So Remnant Violet. So Remnant Violet, you know, very RNG dependent, right? But I'm kind of putting him here because of the artifact coming out or getting buffed, Double-Edged Crescent. It's going to be BIS for him. It's going to give him a chance to counter as well, which will help him stack his focus even faster. And in a meta with very tanky units, his S3 is going to be very strong. He's going to do a lot of damage, and the fact that you can run him on Lifesteal Pen set is going to be very good. And yeah, I think that new artifact is going to make him a very good pick, and I put him in the A tier for that reason. And he's already being picked somewhat right now, right? In Epic 7 World Championship. Now we have Wanderer Silk. Very good cleave unit. Speed imprint, best speed imprint in the game actually. Better than Vildred for some reason, because she's an ML 4-star I guess. But she's very good at CCing or crowd controlling. She has silence, she has Seer pushback, and just very good. Mostly because of her speed imprint though. Vildred, same thing, speed imprint's very nice, but the thing is that Vildred also can be a backup cleaver. I actually use him a lot. If you use him with like Ran and Summertime Hysteria, very good because Summertime Hysteria will pretty much guarantee that she can delete 1 or 2 units, which will CR push the Vildred, and you can soul burn with Vildred and basically clean up after, and he's a very strong cleave unit because of that speed imprint as well, only using cleave. Watcher Shuri, same thing, very good cleave unit, speed imprint as well, very similar to Wanderer Silk and Vildred, mostly with Vildred because of the fact that he does have that damage potential threat as well. Flan, also a cleave unit, no speed imprint though, but she's very good because she provides that crit damage up buff. She has that strip, She also has defense break, right? And the fact that she doesn't have to attack to proc that defense break is very nice against units that can either evade, that are earth first of all, or also that can counterattack. So very good against Rem and Violet as a cleaver. Ruel, I think Ruel has gotten a lot of value recently because of the fact that the meta is slower. In fights that take forever, you're gonna get like 1 or 2 reses off, and that is just extremely valuable. And her S2 heals a lot, so I think she's a very powerful soul weaver. Solitaria, so I just hate this unit. She's really annoying. She's like Dizzy on roids. She has AoE stuns, right? She has, you know, CR pushback. You can't even focus her because of her stealth and her barrier. Super annoying to deal with. So for that reason, she's in the A tier. If you like controlling and pissing people off in RTA with stuns, you should pull for Solitaria and then use her in every single battle. I personally will not like you, but, you know, very strong unit if you like doing that. Crow, similar to FCC, you know, you can never say Crow's bad. Defense buff, you know, one-shot potential, 75% chance to provoke. But he's a little bit worse than the other knights like Aros and Fallen Cecilia because of the fact that, you know, Rimuru can just, you know, pretty much one-shot him almost. Or not one-shot him, but pretty much one-shot him. Landy can also, you know, stack her S3 off his defense buff and pretty much evade his S3 his chariot because of his because of her guiding light. And Spectre Tenebria, same thing, right? She can dodge it as well. But Crow is pretty decent against Hwayoung if you can pick him in team comps where he can live long enough to actually S3 her. LQC, good against a lot of dark units, right? Good against like Fallen Cecilia, good against like Apoc Ravi. The thing is, yes, she's very good against those units, but she needs a lot of setup to work. She is very low speed, so you're never gonna, you know, be able to go fast on her. You're gonna need someone to push her up, give her attack buff and stuff like that. You kind of need to babysit her and baby her a bit and give her a lot of support. But when she does get that support, she's gonna one-shot Apoc Ravis or FCCs, right? Pretty easily. Mercedes. So I think Mercedes is a very good cleave unit, right? You have that chance to counterattack on your S2 and disrupt cleavers. Also very good in situations where they don't really have a lot of damage, right? Also good as a cleaver because her S2 with attack buff will hit twice. Very underrated unit. Mostly only seen in Guild Wars, but I think in RTA she does have her spot. Next we have Troublemaker Crozet. You know, very good knight, very good at protecting a unit, kind of similar to how Aros works where he protects his backline unit, but I think Aros is better because of the fact that of that barrier being very strong, and the fact that the buffs that Troublemaker Crozet gives can be stripped, and also the fact that Troublemaker Crozet can easily just be focused down, right? But he's still a very powerful knight, you know, very comparable to Aros, but a little bit worse in my opinion. SSB, decent counter pick. You can just pick her into Bellions pretty much for the most part, and that's pretty much it. But against Bellions, she's very good. Because Bellion is very widely picked, you know, SSB has to be good as well. Also, against team comps that are very low damage, SSB will be very good as well. Milim A tier because she's only really used as a Landy counter, but if you do see a Landy, you're most likely going to see Milim from the other side. She's very powerful. She basically negates Landy and becomes a must ban. And you can also use Milim against Violets as well, and even Alencia's and Rimuru's, right? She can do a lot of damage. Carrot, bottom of A tier, not as great anymore because, yeah, she is not good against really tanky units, and the fact that there's a lot of cleansing in the game makes her a lot weaker. It's still decent if you can actually get her combo off, but a lot of the times, right, it's really hard to get that combo off. ML Celine, mostly only used with Fallen Cecilia, especially in Guild Wars, but in RTA she does have some usage because she has that revive with that mortal buff, and she's also very RNG dependent, right, with that Dust Devil. But, you know, if she does get lucky with the Dust Devil procs, she can solo your team, and for that reason, she is in the A tier. So yeah, now we have the B tier and the C tier, guys. I'm not going to talk about every single unit because it is getting a little bit long in the video length. But just keep in mind these units, right, usable, but they're mostly going to be strictly for counter picking. So, for example, right, I'll choose, I guess, like DJ Bassar right here, right? Very good payroll counter. Celine, very good cutter for like cleave, very good against cleave. Cdom, very good as a cleave unit. But keep in mind that Cdom is going to be able to get cut by a lot of units as well. T-Cern, very good against cleave, right? Yeah, stuff like that. You also have like Destina, which is very good against cleave as well. So very niche units, but very good in their respective niche. And the C tier units, you know, same thing, but they're pretty much picked in only one situation or against one unit only. And then the F tier, yeah, these units technically are usable, but you'll never really see them unless you're memeing. But yeah, they are technically still usable. So yeah, that's pretty much it for this RTA tier list for the season, guys. I know the video got pretty long, but yeah, you know, it is a tier list, and I kind of wanted to talk about the higher up units in depth because, you there's a lot of differing opinions, and I respect that. I think tier lists are meant to show the opinions of people, and it's good to have differing opinions because everyone thinks about the game in a different way. And honestly, if you guys disagree with anything on the tier list, I'm actually very, very curious what you guys are disagreeing with, because maybe it will help me see a unit in a different light. So let me know in the comments down below if you guys have any differing opinions, and make sure, like I said, you guys do follow me on Twitch, because we do plan to switch to Twitch in the near future. And yeah, I've been playing a lot of RTA, Epic 7, and probably going to branch out into other gacha games as well in the near future. So make sure you guys keep your eyes peeled for that. That being said, guys, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next video. Peace.